All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Can y'all hear me all right? All right. I'm Colin. I'm the founder and CEO of thinkLaw, and I'm really excited you all are here. I'm going to hop right into it, but before I do, just know, if y'all want to follow along on social media, I might say some profound stuff here and there, so go ahead and tweet that out at thinkLawUS or on Instagram at thinkLawUS. So to get started, a little bit about myself. This is my whole crew right here. So my wife, Carrie, is a professor at Arizona State University, which is why I live in Phoenix, Arizona. My daughter, Rose, is 6 years old. She just finished kindergarten and just started the second grade. So you could probably tell who runs our household. My son, Oliver, is 4 years old, and his favorite new word is actually. Like, actually, Dad, actually, Mom. And a lot of times when I think about what I'm able to do right now, where I've went from being a computer science graduate to teaching middle school and high school math in DC and Vegas, going to law school, graduating on top of my class, working as a lawyer, and now leading this organization, thinkLaw, across 21 different states, where we help educators teach critical thinking using real-life legal cases in upper grades, fairy tales and nursery rhymes in lower grades, because there's a lot of shady characters in children's stories. And then a lot of trainings like this, where we talk about Socratic thinking and critical thinking. I feel like it's rare that kids like me get this opportunity. And when I say kids like me, I talk about the idea that I was in free and reduced lunch. My mom struggled as a single mom, immigrant, first generation in this country, because my family's all from Barbados. But on top of that, my dad was actually locked up for a decade for selling drugs. To make it even more complicated though, when I was in first grade, I wouldn't say that I was a bad first grader, but I was gifted at being bad. You know, like I went that extra mile, I put in that effort. Like we once had this science teacher, and her name was Miss Lifshitz. And how could you not get in trouble with a teacher named Miss Lifshitz? And Miss Lifshitz once asked me to do a 100-word reflection on my behavior. So I sat and thought about it and said, all right, I got you, Miss Lifshitz. Did the math in my head, decided to write I hate science exactly 32 times. So I had 4 words left to write I hate you too. So they get me tested and they realize I should have been in gifted classes since I was in kindergarten. Let me talk to you about my experience being gifted. In my gifted classroom in Brooklyn, New York, a couple things you might notice about this picture. First of all, my 90s sweater game was definitely on point. Second of all, my mom put me in the highest high waters in human history, practically wore capris. What you can't tell by looking at this picture is that the average elementary school in PS 208 in Brooklyn, New York had 30 plus kids. My gifted class only had 24. You look even closer, that's actually 4th/5th grade. Meaning that only 12 kids per grade level that were bused to this school had access to this transformational learning experience. This is the moment I realized that although brilliance is distributed equally so often, opportunity is not. And this is what really drives the work that I'm trying to do today, which is how do we create a world where critical thinking is no longer a luxury good? Because let's be real, even when we've got kids that through all sorts of drama, we get them identified through gifted and talented, how do we make sure they're actually getting that quality of program that truly does unleash their critical thinking potential? Before we go any further, I think it's important to talk about what critical thinking actually is. Because I'm not just talking about a set of skills. I had a kid named Ramel, who was the sharpest young man I'd ever come across. Ramel was this amazing problem solver. But Ramel was not a student in my classroom, and his problem was not in math or science. Ramel was my client in my law school's juvenile justice clinic. And his problem was figuring out how to beat adult charges after his arrest just 1 month before his 18th birthday. Ramel had all the critical thinking skills in the world, but you need more than that. You need the habits and the mindsets to actually apply these skills, known as your critical thinking dispositions. Making it even funkier, critical thinking has to be context dependent. So how do we teach critical thinking in a way that transfers across content? It made me think about my experience being a lawyer, because I actually taught at a Title I school while going to law school at night. Please don't try that. Was not the best life decision. But something happened to this gifted underachiever who's never actually even been student of the week my whole life. I graduated top of my law school class, and it was because law school wasn't about learning the law. It was learning how to think like a lawyer, looking at things from different perspectives, asking questions to get information, making claims and backing it up with evidence. And I realized these are the exact same critical thinking skills, habits, and mindsets our kids need. Why in the world would we wait until law school to introduce this? So this is exactly what we do with thinkLaw. And I'll give you a quick example to break this down. There's a real life case about a 5-year-old boy who saw his aunt about to sit down in a chair. And just before his aunt sat down, he pulled out the chair. She fell, broke her hip, had $11,000 in medical injuries, and she turned around and sued her own 5-year-old nephew for battery. A battery happens when you make intentional contact that's harmful and causes damages. So in your gut, I want you to raise your hands right now. Like, how many of you think this 5-year-old should be liable for battery? Raise your hand. Okay, we got maybe one heartless educator in the room. Okay, cool. So if you think about it, and if I ask you to instead, think about the aunt's perspective. What might the aunt use to support that Brian did this on purpose and that it involved contact? Now you're forced to step outside of that initial bias. Now you're forced to step out of that super concrete thing and think, well, wait a minute. He did see her about to sit. He did actually pull out the chair, and at the exact moment she was gonna sit. That took timing. That took thoughtfulness. On the other hand, he's only 5. Maybe 5-year-olds don't understand the consequences, but can you do better than that? Like, what if Brian was trying to be a gentleman, right? Then it would make sense that he would pull it out right before she sat, but he pulled it out too far because of his age. What we're doing here is we're starting to get to this idea that, like, we can think beyond what's right in front of us. We can get our kids to appreciate more nuance. And the thing that's interesting is a lot of our gifted, high-achieving kids struggle with this kind of analysis, right? So how do we get them into this point where we can start making inferences about why she's suing her 5-year-old to begin with? How can we start asking big picture questions like, what would the world look like if you could just go around pulling out chairs on people and get seriously hurt, but they couldn't recover because of their age? Versus a world where you can just go around suing 5-year-olds every time a practical joke goes wrong. Neither is ideal, but which world would you prefer to live in? And at that point, we've taken something that's so conceptually simple, you could introduce in elementary school, and brought it up all the way to a level of rigor that's literally discussed in courtrooms around the country. Quick question, how many of you now think Brian should be liable for battery? Welcome to the dark side, okay? But here's the thing, even if you don't, we don't need to necessarily accept this as an outcome. This is not a right answer, this is a judge's opinion. A judge once had the opinion that separate but equal was okay. We didn't have to accept that either. So what this program is all about is not just giving these kids the tools to analyze the world the way it is, but to design the way the world ought to be. You always heard the phrase, you can lead a horse to water, but can't make him drink. This is how you make that horse super, super thirsty. And when you think about this process of how we want our kids to think critically across disciplines, making a claim, backing it up with evidence, this is what the thinkLaw model is all about, where we can have a 3rd grader in Dayton, Ohio, be able to talk about these same sorts of critical thinking activities. With the kinds of reasons like, if the aunt wins her case, other kids will start getting sued. Kids don't have money or lawyers. This level of analysis, this structure that we give them, allows all kids to access this. And here's the thing. This isn't just about upper grades. As early as pre-K, you can have kids looking at nursery rhymes like 3 Blind Mice, but asking important questions like, what are the hardships of being a blind mouse? Why might these blind mice actually be chasing after the farmer's wife? Maybe she smells like food. It ain't about you, lady, right? So when we start thinking about this idea, maybe social emotional learning doesn't have to be a stand-apart separate curriculum. Maybe we can embed it into instructional content, making this easier. And in the thinkLaw program, the way we look at this is a 3-part solution: curriculum, PD, and parent classes, because this is not work without having our families on board. The way it works, and we have our booth right there, booth 423, we have different curriculum, and our idea is that we want to make it easy for teachers to do this. We give you the slides, we give you the questions, we give you everything you need so that you can prep in less than 15 minutes to really talk about low floor, high ceiling stuff. So you could use this in any classroom, but gifted learners in particular get super excited about anything having to do with justice and fairness. This gets used as a pull-out session, advisory classes for people that do special gifted advisories. There's a lot of different options when it comes to how you want to use thinkLaw. In terms of pricing, the way that it typically works is if you want to do our printed edition, there's a licensing fee, and then there's a per teacher price. We also have electronic packages as well for people that are looking at a broader partnership across their districts. But it's a very super easy thing to be able to lay out and roll out. That's the way our curriculum works. We also do a lot of different PD. I'm thinking like a lawyer PD. About 20 different districts in Texas use us to do their gifted certifications, where we give teachers practical tools that they can pull out on a Tuesday morning in December to make sure they're reaching their kids with critical thinking no matter what subject they're teaching. And of course, the slide thing goes away at that point. But in addition to the PD that we offer, and just talk about the PD prices, for me to come out with travel and lodging all included is $47.50. And we could always negotiate things based on what other partnerships we already have. Last but not least, we have 2 different parent courses. One is called Why is the Milk in the Back of the Supermarket?, which is all about how parents can embed critical thinking into their day-to-day household activities so that their kids get to be the independent learners we've been waiting for, and they get practical strategies to use at home. We also have a class called Defeating I Don't Care Syndrome, which I show, a lot of kids that suffer from I don't care syndrome. That's all about giving our teachers practical tools to unlock underachievement and the challenges that come with that. So that's what we do. If you text THINK to 66866, again, THINK to 66866, you can get a free sample lesson. My booth is right there at booth 423. And again, my name is Colin Seal. You can email me at colin@thinklaw.us. And I thank all of you so much for helping us be a part of creating a world where critical thinking will no longer be a luxury good. Thank you.